Now, in this edition of Battle of the Heroes and Villains, we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked you to grade Emperor Palpatine, aka Sheev Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious, aka the Senate. I'll then calculate an overall score for him, which will then compare to all the other characters we've done thus far. Before then, I read and respond to some of your comments. And speaking of other characters, you can already head down to the comments below and nominate the one we do next. Just respond to the pinned comment below with your suggestion, or vote if the character you'd like to see is already there. And just a reminder, the winner will be whatever comment gets the most votes or thumbs up. So do try to not nominate the same character more than once, or you may do more harm than good for the character you'd like to see by splitting votes that will not be added together. Okay, and without further ado here, let's get to the results, where we'll see that 62% of voters gave Palpatine an A, 27% then gave him a B, 8% a C, which then left 1% to give him a D, and a final 2% to give him an F. And when we do all the math here and count A as a score of 5 and F as a score of 1, Palpatine ends up with an overall score of 4.42 and puts him into 4th place currently. And the first thing I have to say here about these results is that I'm starting to wonder if anyone can touch Kenobi up there on the high ground. Palpatine was one of the few characters that I thought had a shot, albeit an outside shot thanks to the sequels potentially bringing his grade down for some. But I still thought the potential was there, and he really didn't do as well as I thought he might. My guess had him closer to a 4.6 and maybe sliding into 2nd place overall. And at this point I can think of maybe only 1 or 2 characters that have a chance of dethroning Kenobi, one of which being the character who, fittingly enough, literally took him out in the films. Anyway, let's now move on to the comments. But before we do, once again, a big thank you to everyone who votes and or comments on these polls. I hope you've been enjoying this series as much as I have so far. That said, let's get to this week's top rated comment, which this time came to us from the Imperial officer who said, "I will give him an A because he was smart in the prequels, not including the sequels, by the way." And I guess it's not very surprising considering this was the top rated comment, but a lot of people said something similar in their comments, that they weren't including the sequels when giving him a grade, and those who said they were taking them into account usually said it brought the score down. Yes, there were some who said they loved him in The Rise of Skywalker, and I will try to include 1 or 2 of those comments in this video, but for the most part it seems those voting in this poll were not fans of his return in The Rise of Skywalker for one reason or another, some of which I'll of course get to. Alright, our next comment here comes to us from the master of the high ground himself, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who said, "He's a supreme schemer, unbridled genius, has unlimited power, and is unrivaled in his mastery of the dark side. He is unsympathetic, rotten to the core, paragon of pure evil." His character served its role perfectly as the manipulation, temptation, and power of the dark side personified. Luke and Anakin both confronted him and both, in the end, managed to hold on to and regain their mortality and defeat him as true Jedi always should. And I guess episode 9 sort of happened too, but that business with the sequels doesn't count. We also then had this comment from Tariq al-Shukali, who said, "The character is portrayed so well in multiple different aspects of Star Wars. He's been the mastermind since day 1 of Star Wars, and it's great to see how thoughtful and calculated he is. The entire prequel trilogy, where he was at his best, was just him manipulating everyone to assume full power and create his empire under the noses of everyone. It's an A for me." We also had this comment from Sam Giles, who said, "No one does deliciously evil like Palpatine. He is the ultimate bad guy and loves every single solitary second of it, and I enjoy watching his plans unfurl as intended all along. Who else could succeed in waging war against himself?" First of all, well said by you 3, and I totally agree. I love the way that he's able to manipulate everything and everyone in the prequels. We see him go from, sure, what I'd imagine is a fairly popular and charismatic senator, to the emperor of the whole galaxy. And one of my favorite moments in the prequels is the "do it" moment from Revenge of the Sith, not just because of the memes or because it's fun to say, but I love the expression on Dooku's face when he turns and looks at Palpatine and realizes that he too was just another pawn in a game that only Palpatine was ever really playing. And I've heard people ask, why doesn't Dooku rat out Palpatine in that moment and tell Anakin the truth? And I've always thought it was a mix of pride on his part and just sheer respect for Palpatine that keeps him silent till, well, the bitter end. Okay, next up here then we have this comment from Amatreus, who said, "I wish his motives were more interesting, but everything else is perfect." We also had this comment from Arwin the Elf 02 who said, I'm honestly surprised by all the A votes. I would have loved some motive or anything deeper to his character other than just wanting power. That's boring, make him human. And I can certainly see what you're both saying here. And there were other comments who said he got a lower grade because Palpatine seems to be evil just for the sake of being evil, though he does have a lot of fun doing it. But one of the reasons I don't mind it in this case, when in general, like most people, I do like a more complex villain, is that Palpatine sort of defines the Sith. Like all of them, he essentially just wants to rule, have unlimited power, and to live forever. And you might say to that, well, how did he come to want those things originally? What drove him to use or embrace the dark side in the first place? But kind of the point of the character, as I see it, is that all who follow the dark path will come to want these very selfish things. They'll stop caring about anything and everything else. And who Palpatine was or what he may have once wanted doesn't matter to him anymore. And through Anakin or Vader in this story, we see how that can happen to someone. We see that you can start out with the best of intentions, but fall to the dark side and become a monster that doesn't care about those things that originally motivated you. And for me, Palpatine is meant to be the epitome of evil. No more, no less. And that then kind of brings us to this comment from Emperor's Finest, who said, much like Tolkien's Sauron, he is an absolutely evil character with no redeeming factors, and that's what makes him so good. We also had this comment from Sand, who said, he is the devil incarnate, a true villain's villain, A. And then this quote from George Lucas, brought to us by Brandon Manuel, who said, Palpatine represents the devil. He is the pure evil, the Dark Lord of the Sith who is purely out to get more power. And first of all here, yes, that is a real quote taken from George Lucas, if you're wondering. And this is exactly what I was just talking about a moment ago. Palpatine is so corrupted by the dark side that he is evil just for the sake of being evil at this point. Sure, maybe there's a good backstory there somewhere, and maybe it's not all too unlike Anakin. Maybe he started with the best of intentions, or maybe he was just an evil little bastard from the start. Either way, since, again, we see Anakin's fall and what he turns into, we don't really need to know what led Palpatine there. We just need to know how it's all-consuming, that the dark side corrupts anybody who messes with it, I guess you could say. Which makes Anakin's rejection of it in the end, and his return to the light, all the more impactful and powerful. That then brings us to this comment from Bearded Bjorn, who said, Grade A, Darth Plagueis by James Luceno, that is all. And if you're curious about Palpatine's backstory, this is the book for you, though it's no longer considered canon, even though it probably should be. I often get asked, what is my favorite book from the EU? And honestly, it's a close race between this one, Plagueis, and the whole Darth Bane trilogy. I also get asked by people who are looking to get into the EU where they should begin, and there's no better place than where it basically all began for a lot of people, myself included, way back in the early 90s, and that's the Thrawn trilogy from Timothy Zahn. Anyway, let's now move on to this comment from Joel Howard, who said, the prequels made him a lot better character. It gave him depth and made him even more menacing and impressive with how he was able to manipulate Anakin to the point of becoming Vader. Not only did that give depth to his own character, but it also gave depth to why Vader decided to kill the Emperor in Return of the Jedi. However, of course, Disney had to bring him back and remove all depth and scariness he had. He's no longer the careful planner that always thinks 3 steps ahead. He became the villain that warns the heroes that there's a giant attack coming and to get ready and then waiting for some abstract time to launch an attack. He became an idiot for no reason. Yeah, the Rise of Skywalker did kind of turn him into a James Bond villain, the type who just had to announce his plan to give the good guys a chance to stop him. Had he just kept his mouth shut for another 16 hours and deployed his fleet of Death Star destroyers, it would have been checkmate for the galaxy. Okay, and next up here we have this comment from Loftiest, who said, between an A and a B, he was threatening and mysterious in the original trilogy, manipulative and entertaining in the prequels, and sort of underwhelming in The Rise of Skywalker. And I'll say this, if Palpatine coming back had truly been the plan all along, and I mean by all of those making these films, and Anakin is still involved in his final defeat, and I'm not counting his words of encouragement to Rey at the end as really getting involved, I probably could have gotten behind bringing Palpatine back, as long as it was of course still executed well. But kind of shoehorning him in at the end just didn't work. And I know J.J. Abrams likes to swear up and down that he was going to bring Palpatine back all along, and maybe he was, despite no clues in The Force Awakens of course. But clearly, Rian Johnson wasn't on board with that idea. He was all about setting up Kylo Ren as the main villain, which Colin Trevorrow would have ran with in his version of Episode 9. And moving along now, we have this comment from SPI who said, "He is my favorite villain ever. Yes, even above Thanos, who was amazing too. He is both evil and sinister, while at the same time so likable and fun to watch," which is obviously the result of the astonishing acting performance of Ian McDiarmid. He is the incarnation of the dark side and the evil of all 6 episodes, all in one character. Evil, intimidating, likable, and fun at the same time. We also had this comment from Dustin Harrelson who said, "Ian McDiarmid's acting A++. Palpatine's genius plan, A++. Amount of quotable lines, A++. Being awfully thrown into Rise of Skywalker, it's a no for me, dog." We also then had this comment from the Acorn Avenger who said, "A+. Ian McDiarmid plays the face of evil so well, you'd never guess he's the sweetest man on the planet. Even when his character was horribly written in Rise of Skywalker, his performance is as entertaining as it was in the prequels and Return of the Jedi." And I do enjoy the irony that Ian McDiarmid in real life is the opposite of Palpatine, and that he's one of those actors that I really feel loves and embraces his character, that he has a true appreciation for the part he got to play, and not to mention is very gracious towards the fans. It's funny how he is Palpatine, yet is completely not him at the same time. And I think those rumors that were floating around that Matt Smith from Doctor Who was going to play a young Palpatine in The Rise of Skywalker are or were true, but that it just didn't work out or feel right. Because, again, it's one of those characters that is so very well defined by the actor himself that it's really hard to imagine anyone else ever playing him. Okay, next up here then we have this comment from Righteous Itch who said, "Having Vader as such a great and powerful villain, and then introducing the fact that he has a master who is more powerful and is the absolute epitome of the dark side, was one of Star Wars' strokes of brilliance. Sidious didn't even need to be on screen for most of the OT, and yet his presence was still felt. And then in the prequels, having him hiding in plain sight was also a great way to utilize his character." Okay, now granted here, I don't recall the first time I saw The Empire Strikes Back, but it's still frightening to see that Vader, this powerful presence we've seen for a movie and a half at that point, kneel before another and call him master. That scene alone tells you everything you need to know about just how dangerous the Emperor truly is. Alright, now let's get to just a few more comments before wrapping this video up, starting with this one from Landon Hagen who said, "Setting aside the god tier memes, the way Palpatine effortlessly orchestrated the fall of the Republic from within is one of the all-time great evil plots. The fact that it 100% succeeded and did so in a saga defined by its archetypal storytelling is even more impressive. There are so many great little lines and moments, and Ian's performance is excellent. Not every villain needs to be morally complex or relatable to be interesting, and the Emperor is probably the all-time greatest example of that in cinema. Then when you include the memes, he becomes the absolute pinnacle of entertainment. Not even the sequel trilogy could do enough damage to his character to make a difference." Next up then we have this comment from Star Wars Teen who said, "He's insidious, lacking almost any compassion or moral code to complete his own goals or tasks. He's intelligent, persuasive, and manipulative. He's the perfect embodiment of the dark side, so I give him an A+. Then we have this comment from Liv01 who said, "I give him an A because he is a great character. How he's been manipulating everything from the very start, playing both sides of an intergalactic war perfectly for his own personal gain, is amazing on so many levels." Then there was this comment from Like Nobody who said, "I'm afraid our votes don't count. He is the Senate after all." And finally here this comment from Nicholas Rao who said, "Return of the Jedi introduced the Emperor as this mysterious Dark Lord, a powerful, menacing presence, pure evil. However, the prequels made him a real character with a backstory. I think especially Episode 3 shows not only the physical power of Palpatine, but also how he manipulates literally anyone, and his rise as the Emperor closes his story perfectly. The Rise of Skywalker got the feeling of him right, but lacked the context and determination the Emperor was known for." I can certainly agree with that assessment. In the original trilogy, he's simply the devil, the evil presence that looms over the whole thing. In the prequels then, we learned how the devil fooled the galaxy and the forces of good, aka the Jedi, and took power. In the sequels, sure, he felt a lot like the Emperor, thanks in large part to Ian McDiarmid returning to the role, But his horribly stupid plan and the fact that he kills himself with his own lightning again is pretty terrible. Still, for most people, myself included, that cannot and does not ruin this incredible character. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think of Palpatine, or what you think of what I or anyone else had to say in this video. You can also go and nominate or vote for the next character we should do, the poll for which should be up sometime late tomorrow. Either way, do leave a comment below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.